We are live. Oh, this is a milestone broadcast, episode number 10 already. The Bourbon Brothers back at it. Robert Chinesky, supplement engineer, Justin Hall, supplement Snoop. Here we are to talk about all things. It is the week. College football is back. Bourbon is back. We're all back. Everything's back. So welcome to the show. Good to see you, brother. Good to see you. I missed your face earlier this week, so here we are.
Yeah, my friend, it's been good. This is a really, really good first week because it was the first week of college football, the first real week. There were a couple of games last week, but that doesn't
Yeah,
really count.
there's nothing really
No,
going on.
we got the first week of college football, and September is Bourbon Heritage Month.
Bourbon,
It's
yeah.
National Bourbon Heritage Month, so this is a great episode. We got two major things on the docket there. So, but first of all, there we go. My brother jumped in nice and early with some trash talk, and he is a Bama grad, so
Yeah.
unfortunately.
What do you do with a degree from Alabama? Like, is it in crayon? I think so. That is one thing though. You get excited because it's like, oh, you go out of conference, and normally teams play these like shitty out of conference games, and then you know Miami's like, oh, we're gonna play Alabama, and you schedule it a couple of years in advance, so it's like, oh, cool, and then it comes down to it, and you're like, ah, fuck, like,
Yeah.
I don't know, you don't want to play Alabama because this year, like, Miami's actually, the fans are excited. They have a pretty good team. They're like preseason ranked highly for the first time in a long time, highly. And so, you get excited all off season, but you know that the first game you play where you get to see the new team is going to be against Alabama, and you're going to
Juggernaut.
get stomped on national television probably. So it's very bittersweet, but it's kind of one of those games, and you hate to even approach it like this, but if it is a good game to see for the team too, because it's like, if they can hang with Alabama, the ACC is pretty well. North Carolina is supposed to be really good this year, but other than that, Clemson is the only thing Bama like in the ACC, and they're not in Miami's division, so they wouldn't play them. So anyway, I'm excited, kind of, because man, it's like everyone's talking about like, oh, Alabama's replacing basically their whole team. It's like, yeah, they're replacing their whole team with all like
Every year.
five-star, high school All-Americans that would probably be starting for every other team. So people are like, oh yeah, they lost this person. And it's like, well, I remember when Miami used to do that, or LSU, you used to do that. You lose great players, but then you replace them with potentially even greater players. And it's like, yeah, this is just going to be like the coming out party for all these Alabama players.
Yeah, the chomping at the bit.
Well, that was always the thing too, is, Miami's been down for a while, but I said the thing about Miami that kind of sucks is they're never off anyone's radar. Like, if you are a coach or anything like that, like, you want to kick Miami's ass. Like,
Yeah.
So they're never going to like come back out of nowhere. You know what I mean? Because all these coaches grew up either hating them or loving them. And so they, Nick Saban just wants, like, I'm sure, like, to him, Miami's not much, but he wants to just
Get a piece of them.
destroy them.
I mean, there's a chance he maybe lost like one 3-star recruit to Miami, and he's still pissed. Like, even though he has a whole stable full of 5 stars, if he lost like even one recruit to Miami, even if it's like a lower tier guy, he's gonna find something to get the team motivated and to get all of his coaches irritated and like on the ball, regardless of who it is.
Yeah, because they do come to South Florida, and they take guys from Miami's backyard. Not often, but they always get, like, they've been taking like a couple of their big receivers over the last few years have been literally like from Miami, and it's like, God, we could really use those guys, you know what I mean? But they go to Alabama, and then you think too, like, the fans get all mad because they're like, okay, it's one thing if you leave. And I get the playing for championships and stuff like that, but it's like, these are like inner city kids, and then they're going to play football in Alabama, and you're just like, I don't. It's just such a cultural difference and things like that. So.
Yeah, man. With Miami, I even like them as a kid just because their uniforms always just look so like top notch. Do you have a a preferred uniform outfit, and I know this is getting a little frou-frou for football, but
No.
uniform discussions, there are certain classic uniforms. Like I hope they never change Bama's uniform or Penn State's. I don't want them to ever change LSU's. I like Miami's look the way it is. Florida's with the red and orange. Like certain things, I don't ever want to become the Oregon Ducks, where like I've got 15 different uniforms for a 12-game season. It just doesn't make sense to me. You can go change out uniforms at halftime and do retarded things like that. I mean, do you have a preferred combination of the uniforms or anything you like?
Probably. So it's a good point because they constantly have been changing their uniforms and fans don't like it. Like some of them have looked cool, but at the same time, it's tough because I remember the one year they tried to sort of go to like throwbacks. They went to like the Stormtrooper. They called them the Stormtrooper all white outfits. Now, when Miami in the 80s and when they were good, the Stormtrooper uniforms sort of fit, right? They were the bad guys of college football, and they would come in, they were really good, and people hated them. But it's like when you try to recreate that down the road with a team that kind of sucks, it's like it just doesn't work. You know what I mean? It's like you can't. It's not the Miami teams of the past. So it's like they kind of almost. I don't want to say they went the Oregon Ducks route, but they were trying a lot of different things. They've had new uniforms like every year, and so, they get weird. You know what I mean? I like just the classic look of like the 80s and 90s, and some of the ones like I really like some. I think it makes sense too that I like the uniform combinations of some of their like really great teams because it just teams graded and all that stuff. So, but they've been doing some weird things with uniforms. I don't like it over the last few years.
Yeah, simpler is usually the better thing to go. Like a lot of the NFL teams have even like they started making them look almost like I don't know, like arena football level. Like their uniforms, they kind of remind me of that, or like the NFL Blitz. Like you could do like the fancy uniforms, like NFL Blitz, that old arcade game and stuff like that. It's just go keep things nice and simple and clean. I don't need swooshes and slashes and all this other stuff all over the place.
Well, it's usually it seems like, and I get it that like some of the bigger teams will do it just for the fans to give them something kind of cool, but it's usually teams that like they need something, right, to get attention.
And gimmick.
Right. You figure, places like Penn State, Alabama, and all that sort of stuff, they don't change Notre Dame. They don't need to change their uniforms because they're just have that, already that presence. It's teams like Oregon's when they were trying to have something because nobody gives a shit about Oregon. So they're like, okay, well, they have these amazing facilities now, all this money pumped into it, and now they have these cool uniforms. It's like the one recruiting tool that they have for some kids is like, oh, cool uniforms and stuff like that. So the big teams, don't have to do stuff like that. So I think that's why people are like getting annoyed too. And Miami sort of going down that route. It's like, it's that you don't need that. You know what I mean? Like you don't need to do stuff like that. But because like Alabama's a good point. Like I think Alabama's uniforms are actually pretty cool. But would I think they were cool if they were kind of a middling team somewhere? It looks cool because they're really good, and if you play good, right, you look good. So
exactly.
But I'm ready, man.
Look who broke out of his Mexican prison.
So here's a funny story. So we go to Mexico last week. We left last Tuesday. We came back Tuesday night, and I don't think I told you this at all. I talked about it on Instagram, but you don't do Instagram anymore. So while I was there, I talked to Jeff Long, like pro Jeff Long. I've been friends with him for a couple of years now, but I never met him. And he said something. We were just kind of having a chat like last week at some point or like the week before, and he's like, oh yeah, well, it's my 10-year anniversary with my wife. We're taking the whole family. We're going to Mexico. And I was like, oh, really? I was like, when you going? He goes, from the 24th to the 31st. I was like, dude, that's exactly when I'm going. And so I looked, and he was staying at like a family resort that was about like 45 minutes away from the resort we were at. And I was like, it was a good thought. But so we were coming home, and I was like, well, when's your flight? And he said it was at like 12:30. And I was like, dude, our flight's at like 12:20 or whatever. So I ended up meeting Jeff Long at the freaking Cancun airport for the first time.
That's cool.
And then Jordan from Alpha Lion I see his Instagram stories. He was also in Cancun at the same time. And so I messaged, he was like 5 minutes away from me. And he's like, yeah, I fly out about at the same time. He lives in Colombia. And he's like, I fly out at the same time. I was like, holy shit. So I never met Jordan before, never met Jeff before. And then we were all at the Cancun airport at the same time. And Jordan was in the international because he lives in Colombia. So I didn't get a chance to see Jordan, but Jeff and I got to hang out for a little bit. First time I ever hung out with Jeff, and we took a picture. It was like on Instagram, there's a picture of us. We're like 6 feet away from each other with like our masks on, and we're like giving the middle finger to like our mask. And then we took a picture like hugging it out, basically, in the airport. So yeah, I got to meet Jeff Long on the way home, which was the most random. It's like the most random thing possible, man.
Yeah. Is he doing the supplement brand? Is that full time for him, or is that like a side hustle while he's still doing like coaching and other things like that? Or
he does. I know he does some coaching, but he's full go with Like a Pro. They're seems like they're doing really well.
Yeah, that's what I just when we speak to these brand owners, like you see their products on the shelves, but I mean, I have no idea the volumes they're moving. Like or even somebody like NutriBio, Apollon, Primeval, Alphaline. I have no idea the volumes these guys are dealing with. There's a couple of brands I do, but even then, I mean, I'm more on the content, the formulation side. It's not like the nuts and bolts actual business side of stuff. So it's always cool to see like when you see smaller companies start up and then they can kind of turn that into a full-time business thing, and they don't have to deal with quote unquote real work anymore.
Yeah, because he's had the brand for a while too, and that's a good point because there's big misconceptions. You look at a brand on Instagram or whatever, and they look like they're doing certain things, but what you see a lot of time, you'll see, say, like a company owner or something, they'll have sort of an extravagant type of lifestyle, and they'll have a supplement company, and people will assume that they got that from that supplement company, where that's usually the supplement company is some sort of like there's something they wanted to do. They acquired some money elsewhere, and then now they want to have a supplement company. They're not actually making it from. There's obviously some really successful supplement companies, but not nearly as many as people think. And then you start looking at their numbers, and you're like, wow, you know what I mean? It's like you're not. So he's had his company for a while, and I think just over the last couple of years, and then he basically retired from bodybuilding and basically went full go into Like a Pro. And that's when, because you know it is, man, like you meet brand owners all the time, and I talk about this almost daily. It's a side hustle for them, and you can't make it a full-time job unless you make it a full-time job. Like people always they fund it through their main job, right? Which is, you can't do that. So they're constantly just funding, and then it's nothing more than a hobby, really. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's true.
And it doesn't really ever go to that next level because they don't really like commit to it. So I'm sure it was a little rough for him to make that transition. I'm sure like if I haven't actually like talked to him about how that transition went, but you know, going from a successful bodybuilding type, you know, being a sponsored athlete and things like that. And I know like he was one of the ones getting like monthly salaries and stuff like that. So that transition while having a family and, you know, all that stuff. So I'm sure that would be an interesting story to talk to him about.
Absolutely. What was the bourbon scene like at the resort? Like for people that have never been to a resort before, typically it's like it's not like the finest selection of stuff you get like a like if you went to a whiskey bar or something like that. But they usually got a few pretty good options there. So what was the spread like at the resort y'all were at?
Yeah, this one, it was more, you know, it's in Mexico, so it's more tequila, like more like high-end tequila than bourbon. You're right, because a lot of the all-inclusive places, like depending on the level that you go to, some of it's just like very like cheap stuff. This one was like a really nice place, but it was more tequila driven. Like they had like Johnny Walker Blue and things like that, and like to that level. But it was more like as far as like bourbon went, they didn't really have like a whole lot like bourbon.
Yeah, so they probably got what, like regular Black Label Evan Williams, Jack Daniels, probably the basic stuff like that, I would imagine.
They had the I don't even remember because I didn't even actually like have any because I sort of looked at the shelf and I was like, eh,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? But they had some really cool like mixology, like this mixology bar there that was really
Cool.
it was awesome. It was awesome. We would go there like after dinner, basically like every day because they had more top shelf like liquor when it comes to other categories.
Yeah.
Not so much the whiskey. Um, but you could go and get some people just go to like these things and they just sit there and they just pound drinks all day
Yeah, they go
long.
with the blender drinks or the what you call it, beer that they always have out there.
Yeah, or just like a regular basic like mixed drink or something like that. But
Yeah.
this one they had an actual like really cool bar that did some really crazy stuff. Like I was shocked. Yeah, those people were like really talented. So we kind of hung out there because we're not like a get drunk kind of people, but we did basically like we would go down to like the pool and then just drink basically all day.
Yeah, you
But
just
not
keep you
like
maintain that level. You
right.
you don't go
Yeah.
over the tipping point, but you ride that edge real finely.
Yeah. You're not like going and getting hammered, but you just enough, and then just maintaining it because then you go back, get ready for dinner and all that stuff, and just keep it going. So it was
Yeah.
basically like a week straight of being like slightly inebriated the whole
Just
entire
around the
time.
clock. There you go.
Yeah.
How was the food there? Is the like certain resorts, something like Sandals, where they usually have like 3 or 4 different resorts within like a certain location. Each one of those will only have like maybe 2 or 3 restaurants in, but you get free shuttle service to putt around all those.
Mhm.
When we stayed at the place, there was I think 7 restaurants within that one resort, and that was one of the big reasons we wanted to stay there, so that we didn't have to leave the grounds if we didn't really want to try a bunch of different places. So how was the food layout where y'all were?
Yeah, the food was. That's one reason we stayed at this same chain in different countries. The food is absolutely fucking phenomenal, man. Like it's the same thing. So this Iberostar, we stayed at the Grand, which is the adults only. It's like the top
Yeah,
level, or whatever. But you
you're
could
a high
go to
roller. We get it. You're a high roller. We got it.
right, as you can tell, right. um, so there is like other properties around where they're like, oh, you can go like here. They're like the one place had like a dance club or like a casino and like all that other stuff. So if you wanted that, because the place we were at, very private, very like quiet, very like it's the romantic kind of vibe to it. But it's like if you want a different experience, you can go like to the other sort of hotel where like nah. But they can't come to yours. Like the people at the other resorts can't come to the one
cool.
we were on.
Yeah.
Because you're just paying for that extra level of service. But they had, I think there's 6 restaurants in our hotel, and dude, the food. Oh my god, the food is so good. Like mind blowing food. And that was one reason I keep going back to the same one. Is I think it's again on the same level, like where if you go somewhere, you kind of get what you pay for, kind of deal. And the food, from what I've heard, like other people say, you go down and pay less for places, and you just get like this.
Yeah.
This was like legit. Like they have like legit chefs. The presentation of the food was like insane. I don't take pictures of food and stuff like that, but it was worth taking pictures of like some of the presentation that they had. And the hibachi restaurant that we went to the last night was one of the best meals I think I've ever had in my life.
Really?
The hibachi was just so good. The quality of the sushi and the chicken and the steak and everything was just like some next level stuff.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, so it was this one was the private sort of section of it. Like I said, we could go wherever we wanted, but people weren't allowed to come to our resort.
Yeah,
which was nice.
Very cool, man. Well, I'm glad you had a good time and you got back Tuesday and you recovered well enough.
Yeah, it was kind of so. I'll tell you a story about what a dumbass I am. So I'll take people behind the curtain. So, Prady, my business partner, Prady, he's a machine, right? So I talked to him and he's like, hey man, he goes, he's like, just just enjoy your vacation. He's like, I got this. Like, we have meetings with our clients like all throughout the week. We usually have like one check-in call with every single client every single week. Yeah. And he's like, he's like, I'll handle this stuff, man. He's like, just don't worry about it. Go enjoy yourself. And I'm like, it was really awesome. So, because it's hard to pull yourself out of work mode. Like, this same thing. You don't have work hours, so you're constantly working, even when you're not working. You're always thinking about what you have to do, thinking about what's next. So anyway, we have a meeting with one of our clients early on Wednesday mornings. And I remember, it's a long day of travel on Tuesday, and it's a long sort of vacation. And it was Tuesday night. We got home, and I was like, God, I really hate that I have to get up early for this meeting on Wednesday morning. I was like, why didn't I think about this? Like, after all this travel and stuff, I'm like, I really don't want to set an alarm the day after a vacation. And, the person that we meet with is love them to death. You know what I mean? So it's not like it's a big deal, but I was just kind of being a baby about it. So I set my alarm and whatever. I wake up Wednesday morning, and now, I'm out cold Tuesday night, like dead. And my alarm actually wakes me up, which never happens. And I'm like, I get up and I'm like, God, man, I'm like, this sucks. And I'm bitching, I'm being a huge baby about it. So time for our meeting comes up, and I get on the call, and I'm the only one there. And I'm like, so I text everybody. I was like, hey, I'm on. And Brady's like, dude, he's like, we moved the call to tomorrow. He's like, you're the one that moved it. And I'm like, son of a bitch.
You're drunk in haze?
Well, so early in the trip, I thought ahead, because there was 2 hurricanes that came through right around us too. And there was Hurricane Ida, right, as you know.
Yeah.
That was coming through the day we were supposed to fly out. And I was like, oh, shit. So I was thinking ahead. I was like, we might have some delays. It might take a long time. So I said, right when we got there, I'm like, can we move the Wednesday morning meeting to Thursday? And everybody's like, oh, yeah, that's cool. I totally forgot. And, over the course of the trip, I totally just lost track of everything. So I'm sitting there, and Pretty's like, you're the one that moved it. I'm like, oh my God, what a jackass. So anyway, that was my welcome back gift to myself, was making myself get up when I didn't need to. And I'm like, come on, man. I said, get it together. Because, you come back and it's like you have to get right back into it. But I was like, okay, we're good now, I think. I think that yesterday was I was a little spotty yesterday.
Yeah, recalibrating.
Some of my reliability, but we're good today.
Good deal. Any listeners tuning in, you guys got any questions, comments about college football, bourbon, or anything else, fitness, nutrition, supplementation, feel free to fire away. We'll answer anything. We'll be on for about another 30, 40 minutes or so before Justin's got to hop off for a meeting. Question that I had for you, Justin, you brought up a really good point that I'd like to ask you about. You said, given the way that kind of our jobs are and a lot of the other people in the supplement industry, it's not, your brain is constantly on a number of other professions for people that work from home. Your brain is always in go mode. Is that actually a good thing, though? Or is it better if you, like, going back to, like, if you had a factory job, or if you worked, like, even in an engineering office where it was, 6 to 4, I'd go there, I'd be in the office from 6 to 4 or 6:30 in the morning till 4 in the afternoon or whatever. But then after that, I can shut my brain off. I don't have to think about it. Is that better for you psychologically and mental health wise over the long term, to be able to just go in there, leave it at the door, or to be in this kind of semi always on mode like we are nowadays, where you have stuff all the time? You're not just restricting your work day to 8 to 5, 9 to 5, something like that.
Yeah, dude, that's a great question, because and the same way, I've done both. I think about this all the time. Excuse me. I think about it all the time, because you're in that mentality where for years that's what I did. You could, once you punch the clock, you were done.
Yeah.
I think, though, if I can just speak from a personal experience, as much as if you're in a profession where you can, quote unquote, leave it at the door, I think there's an underlying stress when you're not happy sort of in that position. You know, a lot of people work their 40 hours, or, you know, a lot of people work 50, 60 hours, and then you punch a clock and then you're done, right? You're not checking emails, like, unless you're in management and stuff like that. And there was that constant battle too. Like, we could even talk about that, where I remember being like on the floor and then people criticizing like management and stuff like that all the time, you know, because that's just what people do. And I'm like, understanding it then, but then also being in like the management side, you see it, you're like, you know, those people deal with things that you don't. You know what I mean? Like, problems that you take for granted. Like, they'll go home and they're at dinner and there could be calls, there could be emails and stuff like that. It's harder for them to shut it off than you are.
True.
So, but you're exactly right. Like, now, because I said this the other day, I said this was the first probably real vacation I've ever had. And because after probably like day 2, I really just let things go. I stopped worrying about what we were going to do when we come back. I stopped worrying about the meetings. I stopped worrying about, because Brady's like, I got this. And it's hard to like let that be on someone else. But back in the day when I would take vacations, like, you know, working for GE was a great job. They, you know, made good money. And so I started going on these vacations back then. And I remember we would go to like Jamaica, like during our shutdown. You know, they would basically tell you when you could go on a vacation, right? So we would go, and as relaxing as it was and as cool as it was, you always knew you were going back to something that was not ideal. You know what I mean? So maybe you can shut it off, but it's always there. You know what I mean? It's always there, and it sort of like seems like that type of stress or that type of thing, it comes out in other ways, you know, where it's not as like on the surface, like you're freaking out about, you know, missing a deadline or a call or whatever, but it comes out like in weird ways like that, because it's so not on the surface stress and things like that, it's almost, like I said, it's very underlying. I don't know if that makes any sense or not, but it's always there, but you just don't notice it as much as you do now, because it's still always there, but it's so like in your mind all the time that it's noticeable. Whereas then you think you're sort of shutting those things off, but it's like it's always there, like on your back. You know what I mean? Going, you know, you have to go back to something, because you're basically like what a lot of people are doing. I think you're just doing what you can to survive, right?
Right.
To get through, to spend that time with your family, quality time with your family, quality time by yourself, or whatever. So you're doing things you don't want to do all day to get there. So when you are in that moment trying to enjoy yourself, you still know that you got to go back. And I think that kind of eats away at you too. So, but you're right, man. You can't shut this stuff off, like, because your future is so in doubt at all times. You know what I mean? Like,
I mean, that's pretty much it. Like, because I mean, well, I guess I was gonna say you own a business, but you're also a consultant for other businesses too. So part of your income is beholden to those other companies. So you got the app and the stuff that you built out through the app, but at the same time, you're also consulting for these other brands. To where if they have a down year for whatever reason, that could affect your bottom line or like your monthly income. Or, you know, earlier this year, some of the companies I was consulting with and writing for, they just said, hey, we're putting a hard stop on stuff. And then you're just kind of like, all right, I'm going to go hunt for some other clients, some other companies that might need some help or writing or stuff like that. So you are always kind of on that like gopher mode, I guess, because you're trying to like go from there and do those kind of things. And so you always wonder, is that a good way to be, or is it better to be kind of like the hey, I'm working for this massive corporation, I've just got to punch my clock for 8 hours and I'm good? I mean, I much rather having the flexibility to do what I want to, call my own shots, work for people I want to. Just I wonder from like the mental health and just kind of like stress standpoint.
Yeah, you're right, because I think it really comes down to the person, right? Because that's why there's a lot of people that see people in certain positions and they say, I want that. And I'm like, you sure? Because like I even talk about this with like Brady. You know, he's just turned 30. He's like super successful, and people would look at him.
30?
Yeah, he turned He'll be 31 in December. He just turned 30.
I thought he was a little bit older than that. I thought he was like 33 or 34. I didn't realize
No,
he just turned 30.
Yeah, he just turned 30. It was last December. I think December 13th is his birthday. So, yeah, because he came in for the Christmas party last year at TNS. It was on his birthday, and but yeah, so people will see him and they'll go, "Man, that's a young guy that, you know, he's super successful." But I'm like, you don't know what he goes through. Like, I don't know that I could do what he does. You know what I mean, on a day-to-day basis. But I think that's also why, like, a lot of people that I talk to, there's some people that live beyond their means always, but a lot of people that are in like our positions, man, I know that's one reason. Like, you live way below your means because you don't know. It's like, it's cool because, you know, it's like you make, and what's one great thing about being in this position rather than the 40-hour, at least for me, because I'm just kind of, I want to have more control over my future, and that was the whole point behind all this. But you know, when you get your check at work, money's already gone, right? Government takes their taxes.
Yep.
So, but when you're in this position, they give you the money up front, and then it's up to you what to do with it.
Right.
Which that is a great thing, but it also complicates things for a lot of people. Like, there's a lot of people that just want that stability and that comfort, even if they don't, even if they hate it, they need it. They need, because we all need that kind of structure. Human beings just respond to structure, even if it's not ideal. So it's definitely a topic we've talked a lot about, man. Like, people making that transition, it's why literally I'm two different people. There, I had the person I was before, and then there's the person I've been over these last few years, because it's such a drastic change in every aspect that I'm like, man, if I had never taken this chance, I don't even know, like, I would have never got to know this person that I am now. And same as you, like, if you just find out so many different things about yourself when your back is kind of, you're literally like, your back is against the wall. Even when you're doing well, your back is against the wall at all times. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Like, you're always on that kind of go of like, hey, you've got to be ready. If like what I was saying, there were like a couple of companies just say, hey, we're not selling as much, or, you know, our stores are shut down. We can't do X, Y, and Z stuff. And so, sorry, we don't need your services right now. We'll call you back in 3 months. And then that call never comes, and you're under. But you don't stay around and wait, like, or at least I didn't. Like, the second you start, and I had the same instance kind of in engineering. It's like, when the price of oil would go down, you'd start to see people at the offices start to get let go. And then that was right when my mind, where it's like, you start looking at those other engineering firms. And so luckily that's, you know, I was able to kind of like stay ahead of those cycles. But like, you'd see a few of like the lower people, or like people that were newer to the company, they would get let go first. And you start realize, all right, well, oil still hasn't gone up, and it's been another round of layoffs. And so you hop ship. But it's the same thing in this industry. Like, you see somebody starting to slow down, you start searching other clients, or you branch out into other avenues of what you can do, or even just go write for other industries. I mean, you could do food writing, alcohol writing, which maybe I'll start dabbling in that, or something like bourbon writing or something. I don't know.
Yeah, no. And actually what you just said is phenomenal, because that is exactly what happened. It's literally the price of oil too, because it was always ironic being in the position you were in, and it was the same as us. When oil, like, everyone gets excited when the price of oil drops, right? Not us.
No, not at all.
Because you're like, dude, we're fucked. So that was exactly, now the way GE was, there would be constant temporary layoffs all the time. And then there would be like large layoffs that could take a year or two before they would like call you back.
Were they actually laid off, or were they just furloughed? Like, were you still with the company and they just kind of put you on pause, or were you actually like let go officially from the company? You could go hire on with somebody else.
Yeah, so there would be some would be temporary, like just a couple weeks at a time, because there's laws with unemployment and the way Pennsylvania was and stuff like that, where there would be like a timing thing. But then there was like, you know, we went through a large layoff that you're gone. Right? That's when I went back to school full time. Anyway, it's a whole like long story, but they eventually called me back, but it was like 2 years later. You know what I mean? So when I that was the light bulb moment for me, was when I was working there, realizing that, so if you're scared to go out there and say, have your future be in a lot of doubt, and like this back against your wall, like this thing we're talking about, where you're just constantly like, oh God, I got to keep.
Yeah.
So part of the deal when you work for someone else like that is, if I do a good job, then I have a job here and I have stability. Well, when that was taken away from me, I was like, what the fuck am I doing? You know what I mean? You're like, the deal was, if I hold up my end of the bargain, you provide me a job and a paycheck, and then I can have all this stuff. I can be married and I can buy this house and I can buy these toys. But when that was removed from me, or when the prospect of that, actually, like what you said, when you could kind of see what was going on, I'm like, dude, why the hell are we doing this? Or why am I, if it's the same position, why am I letting someone else dictate when I'm going to be laid off or when I'm not going to have work? Wouldn't I?
Right.
And if I can't run the company, if I can't go out there and try to, sell, we built locomotives and things like that. If I can't go out there and physically control someone giving us work, I have to rely on someone else. I'm like, why don't I just do that on my own?
Yeah. What do I need you for?
Right. If I'm going to go, I said this to my ex-wife, my wife at the time, I was like, if I'm going to go down, like, I'm going to go down on my terms. I'm going to go down swinging at least. I'm not just going to sit there and wake up every day hoping that someone gives me some work or something like that. I'm like, I'll go find it myself, which is easier said than done. But it's funny that you said that about oil prices, because once oil started to drop, we're like, oh my God, we are so screwed.
Yeah, I mean, like the consumer hates it when oil is at like $110, $120 a barrel. The oil companies love that. Like the consulting firms love that, because that's when Shell, Chevron, Texaco, all of these companies are throwing money at all the consulting firms. And then the second it dips below like $80 a barrel, and when it gets to 60, that's when things get super lean in the oil and gas sector. But yeah, man,
wasn't it like at like 30 or 40 at one point, or maybe?
I mean, it got like that low, like 2010. 2010, I think, is when that first round of or at least the first round when in my early career, because I graduated LSU in 08, May of 08.
That's
and so the company I had interned with for 2 years was super fine, and then right at like the end of 9, I think the early portion of 10 is when things started to get lean the first go round.
Yeah, there was a huge layoff at GE in 2010. I started there in, I think it was like 2011, because what they did was, there was the layoff and then things got busy, right? There's this huge roller coaster. So then they hired all these people, and I was part of that. And then the same thing happened a few years later. And you knew it going in, though, kind of thing, which is, so I always kind of had this, I'm like, okay, we're making like fantastic money here. There's a lot of advantages. They're going to have to, like, if they do lay us off, they have to take care of you for a little while, right? It was part of NAFTA, which is ironic that the reason why you lost your job in the first place was because of NAFTA, but they had to at least
they're taking care of you on the back end.
They had to at least do something for you. So I'm like, I was always planning in my head. I remember saying, when I took a job there, I said, if I can get 5 good years here, that would be good, because I can make as much there in 5 as I made in my last job in 12 or 15. I was like, so let me take that extra money and put it towards something else on the horizon. And if for some reason things work out here, then worst case scenario, I'm here, but always planning for something else. So then when the big layoff happened to me and everyone around me, I was so in shock at the panic that people had. I was like, I'm looking around and I'm like, you guys gonna act like you didn't know this was gonna happen? You know what I mean? Like, it's not. It's been happening. This company is like 100 and some years old. It's been happening from the very beginning. So it was just always planning ahead. So I realized I was doing that anyway for someone else's company. I was like, man, why don't I just take control of this situation? And I think a lot of people wouldn't do it, though, because they're already too far down. Like, we bought our house. We were living in the town I grew up in, our forever home. You're married and you're making all these plans. And then to just wipe all that away I think is more than most people are willing to do. They're like they refuse to take a step back in order to take steps forward, because you feel like you're starting over, like in a bad way. But really what you're just doing is you're removing yourself from, I always make the pond analogy, you know what I mean, like the big fish in a small pond kind of thing. You're just removing yourself from the pond that's becoming constrictive, and you're putting yourself in a larger pond. Now you have to kind of start over, but you have this much bigger territory that you can basically explore, I guess, is for a lack of a better term. But
no, that's a great analogy.
Yeah, it just gives you more opportunities, to do things. Because really, and that's one thing with you, if you really want to, there is no limit to what you can do now, right? You can do whatever you want. Like Brady was saying on our one call the other night, he was like, business is like the last great frontier. I think I mentioned this on the podcast before. He's like, it's that last like bit of discovery. It's untapped. Like you can basically look out there and you see these things people are doing that no one would have ever considered before. You look at what Amazon does and Tesla and all these. There's no limit to what you can accomplish.
No, create either some type of good or service, whatever magic widget you can do, and if somebody's willing to buy it, you got your career right there, man. Just figure out a way to make something that people are highly invested in or highly seeking. It could be, whatever magic widget or service that you provide. And that if you're willing to work it, you can make good money doing it, especially if you're passionate about it and you become the best, or, maybe not the best, but you get really, really, really freaking good at it. You can make a really good living, and it could be doing anything.
Yeah, and I think, and I don't know if you've gone through this, but one thing that, and this is kind of where we're at right now, we're going through another sort of transition in the supplement Snoop business where you try all these different things, right? Because it's all new to you, right? And you're like, okay, we'll try this. And then you realize you're doing like 10 different things. Then it's like, okay, pick that one thing. Pick the one thing that you realize you're really good at and that's giving you a good return on your time, and then get rid of everything else. You know what I mean? Because there's some people that just get overwhelmed because there's so much potential that you're like, you say yes to everything, and you're doing all this stuff, and it becomes where you're just busy, but you're not making any sort of progress. And that's what Brady and I have sort of shifted a little bit over the last couple of years. We've been learning everything there is to know about Amazon, because start to realize too, in the supplement space, there's nothing wrong with this, like not at all, but it's kind of the same recipe over and over and over again, right? Where a company starts a brand and then they want to go retail, and then you look at social media and stuff, and almost all the companies are exactly the same. All their content's the same. They're trying to get in the same places, and a couple of them are more successful than the others. But we kind of realized that we didn't really want to play that game where you're just helping the same people do the same things over and over and over again. So we're kind of, transitioning away from that a little bit.
Yeah, and you bring up a good point. So, like, we see so many new brands or new products come on. Like you go check out stack.com. And there's an endless feed of new products, new flavors, new brands, new whatever coming out. But it's like they're all doing the exact same thing. They're all going to eventually go on Amazon. They're all going to be using the same targeted messaging on Facebook ads or Google ads, or so getting Instafluencers and all of that stuff. And you just wonder, it's like, what? And this is a topic I was talking with Sandy about Monday night. I just thought, because I go through these little kind of like peaks. I'm not a peak and valley. Just every now and then I get this notion in the back of my mind. It's like, you're writing this content for these various brands. Is it actually accomplishing anything, or are you just adding more noise to something that is already just wah, 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 like all the time? And that's something I find myself contemplating or struggling with, especially over like the last year and a half of stuff. It's just because a lot of, like you said, all these products are more or less the same. A lot of the content is all the same. It's like, how many different variations of a chest press can we talk about in an article? How many ways can you make tracking your macros, getting in cardio, resistance training? How many ways can you like sexify that up to make it sound like a new topic when it's really a rehash of something that's been said 4 billion times by 3 million different authors on the internet. So
yeah, because, and you know this, and the way you write is a gift, right? Because especially these days, most people can't do it, like, or they don't want to do it, right? There's a, but then also it's like you've written the same article a million times, right?
Yeah.
And you just change the details a little bit, and you get to that point where it's why, like, if you look at my Instagram feed and things like that, like, I talked about supplements and I review, but dude, like, that's not what I want to do. Like, I don't want to be a fucking supplement review, because there's like, what am I going to say? Like,
it's the same thing over and over. Great energy. Awesome.
Yeah, this tastes good. This doesn't taste good. This and that, and it's like, that is so boring to me. Like, what separates me from anyone else? People are like, oh, well, you know, you say honest things. Okay, great. I say I'm honest. Wow, okay. So it's like, where is what am I adding anything? Like, so the way I do it now is like, I do think that I can add some things to the space. So I do that, but that's not, you know, we sort of like, okay, what else can I do? Like, what more can I do there? Because you don't want that to be just like your sole focus. Because, like, I'm the same as you, where it just, at one point, it just got so boring to me. Like, people are like, what do you think of this pre-workout? I'm like, I don't fucking know. It looks like every other pre-workout that I've seen like 100 times. And it's like, then you get like that new shiny pre-workout that does some different things, and you're like, hey, that's cool. And you're like, oh, what'd you think of it? I'm like, it was awesome. It was great energy and great focus. And it's like, I don't know, like, what are you supposed to say? It's the same stuff over and over and over again, even if it is slightly different. What started to excite me more was how brands would present, you know, the actual branding aspect, the messaging. That's where you do see some deviation a little bit. You know what I mean? The products themselves. As much as I love formulas, and I'll always gravitate towards companies that use cool formulas, but with the one thing about the full transparency labels, I don't want to say it's a downside. It's not a downside, but when you fully disclose everything you're doing, any company that is maybe trying some new things, like we'll use Inspired. You know, we'll use our friend Chris as an example. I had a conversation with him about this. Chris does more testing on his products than most people I've ever met. Like, he'll send me something a year before it ever actually comes out.
Right.
He does a lot of testing, and he'll send stuff to me, he'll send stuff to you, and not tell us anything about it. He wants real feedback. So now he spends X amount of time on R&D and then busts out a pre-workout. Now it's fully disclosed. Now anyone can go and make the same thing. Where he spent a lot of time trying to get this right, and now his branding is strong enough where people won't, you know, necessarily. But that's tough, man. That's a tough gig. Like, why would you really want to do that all the time? Where it's like you spend all this time trying to develop something, and then you just put it out there. And I know that the proprietary blended stuff goes downhill very quickly, but I understand in some small way, like, why people would want to protect that, but it's just not the world we live in. So what is going to really separate your fully disclosed, you know, pre-workout from everybody else's? It's whatever your messaging is. And that's when I think you get to see like some real personality come out, you know, in companies. Whereas, do you see personality in formulas? Maybe. You know, I think Glaxon maybe.
I mean, like, if you know the formulator, I guess the person that is doing the formulating, you know them on a personal level, or they've got enough popularity or notoriety in the industry. Like, you can say, all right, or like certain people just kind of gravitate towards certain ingredients, or like I associate certain ingredients, or the certain way a formula is certain laid out that you can associate with that person, even if they are not knowingly like the face of a brand or openly associated with that brand. You kind of know, like, it's the same like writing or the way you just conduct yourself. Like, you can pick up somebody's voice or their essence or whatever it is in the way that they formulate things or the way they do things and do like that. So
I shouldn't say it. I was just gonna say, maybe like if you're reading a website that provides information about, say, ingredients or something like that, and you read it and it's got someone's name on the article, but you really know it was someone else because you know their writing style. Is that what you're talking about?
I wasn't going down that route, but sure. I was thinking of a
Just
formulator.
hypothetically, totally.
Yeah.
Hypothetically. Heather will appreciate that. So
Yeah, she will. She yep.
But I know exactly what you mean. You have that. It's just kind of interesting because I think it's a good thing also that that we're still struggling within the industry to reach the general person out there, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it's a lack of resources or a lack of knowing how to get there, because the brands that have the biggest reach are the ones that leave the ability to reach in the margins. When you see, as much as, like, I've said this like lots of times, but honestly, man, like when I have like a small brand that does like a 144 unit run with NutriCap, I could tell as soon as they reach out to me and they show me their formula, and it's kind of sad because it's like I don't want to like bring bad news to them, but is when they show it to me and they say, "What do you think?" I'm like, I think that you are screwing yourself before you even get started. Because I'll ask, like, what do you intend to do with this product? And then they'll say like, oh, we want to be everywhere. We want to appeal to, everyone at the gym. And I was like, well, you can't do that with this formula. Sorry. Yeah. So people have fallen in love with this fully loaded, expensive formula, but they don't factor in. And I know I've beaten this subject to death, but I just see it so much now, because it's so easy to make a product now, and people they think some kind of magic is going to happen. It's really just about money and numbers, at the end of the day. Like, so but it's kind of cool, like in the same way, because I think things have changed for the good. Like back, say, when you were originally starting with like Price Plow, it seems like an eternity ago. In ways, because the way we've seen sort of formulas change, and now the full transparency, we've seen a lot of brands that were against it sort of just conform to it because people demanded it. But it's also then opened the door for new issues, within the industry, where you're trying to solve new problems for a lot of people, when that was kind of part of the problem before, was we couldn't get transparency. And now it's like, I'm kind of going, man, we have too much transparency like sometimes
with certain things, especially like an open label thing that's got like 1 gram of citrulline in it or something like that. You see formulas like that and you're thinking, I would prefer, and Robbie said this numerous times before,
I said this,
and like you have too. It's like, that's put that shit in a prop blend, man. Don't show me 500 milligrams of arginine, 1,000 milligrams of citrulline, and tell me you've got some magic pump complex going there. Put all go the GAT route where you've got everything in there.
I've definitely said a few times where I'm like, someone asked me about a product and I'll look at the formula and I was like, man, they should have prop blended this.
And I mean, it's like in Chris's case with Inspired, I mean, it's the old versions of Devastate. He had the ergogenic side open label, and then the stim complex was prop blended. Now I would 99.9% of the time, I'm all for keeping it open label as possible.
For sure.
That 0.1% where I can understand is where you've got that special sauce in the stim complex, like he used to do with Devastated, not Devastated, White Cut. White Cut, still the hardest goddamn hitting thing I've ever tried. I never got to try Jack 3D back in the day when it was laced with God knows what. I never got to try that. So
I never tried White Cut. So I tried Jack, but I never tried White Cut. But you're right. But also one of the reasons why you're like, that's I understand that is because Chris. Right? You know what's going on behind the scenes, where it's like, if you were to just see that and it was maybe someone you didn't know, you might. So it's just it's a tough thing. Like, how do you get down that deep to people? It's kind of what we try to do, is bring everybody together in the same place, and that way people can get to know. Because I always want to know, like, anymore, I try not to say too many things about products and formulas. I would rather, I want to give the company an opportunity to tell me why first, and then I'll determine. I was just talking with the company yesterday, and we totally disagreed on the why and what they were doing, but at least they told me. I was like, okay. I was like, as long as you're explaining yourself, and that's cool. People can then figure it out for themselves, even though we totally disagree. But
I mean, we bring up Chris a lot as our case study or our prime example of somebody we trust if they put a prop line. There's other people out in the industry like Joey Glaxon. I'm going to trust him. I know Robbie's never going to do a prop blend, but if he ever did, I would trust him to do it. Or Brian, Gorilla Chemist. There's a bunch of Morphogen Ben. If like these people ever decided to actually go that route and do a prop blend of an energy blend, I would trust them because they've kind of established they've got their credibility and just past history of use of stuff like that. So that's one thing I don't want people to confuse, is that we only trust Chris Waldron and Inspire. There's other people in the industry we try.
Well, it was kind of like when Glaxon released Xeno. They have their MyoSeq, that proprietary amino acid blend, and people like one of the first, the message board warriors, the keyboard warriors, bitching about prop blends and like asking me my opinion. I was like, if you look at their company, every single thing they do is transparent, right? Fully broken down. They show all their standardizations for everything. They're one of the most transparent companies we see. Yeah. So I'm like, why do you think that they didn't disclose that then? It's not a shady. They're trying to. Why would they do that with amino acids? You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, why? It's like because they feel like that they have something that other people don't. So that's like one of those. Because you and I have talked about that in the past, or you've heard that excuse in the past, like a BPI says, well, there's synergy, and we don't want to disclose that. You're like, just shut the fuck up.
Yeah, when everything you do is underdosed and shitty. Yeah.
Right. But so you see how that whole like protecting intellectual property goes off the rails in the space. But every now and then you do see an example where you're like, okay, like even if you don't like support it, you can be like, I understand where you're coming from with this. Like I said, Xeno was one of those examples where I'm sort of like, if I see a proprietary blend of something, I try not to like rush to I want to see what else is sort of going on with the company. Yeah. And you can usually tell pretty easily, like, okay, this company is doing it because they're cheap. And we know that it's a lot cheaper to make a proprietary blend, especially when it comes to testing and things like that. So
very much so.
It's just, how it goes, man. There's like always a nuance to everything. I would prefer everything to be open label, especially when things are going on our bodies, especially. But, we don't have to beat that home too bad.
And bringing things to a close here, what do you what's on plan for game day? Do you have a game day ritual that you're doing or anything like that?
Yeah, it's a good question because I'm in a new spot this year. I'm in a new town. I have a totally different life.
Is Jacob a big college football guy? Like, is he a Gamecocks fan or anything?
It's interesting. It's interesting here, right? Because you have the big South Carolina versus Clemson.
Yep.
But then since basically, which is South Carolina is another interesting thing where college football teams, they seem to think that they can do better. Yeah. They get rid of Steve Spurrier. I don't know like all the details like behind it, but they've been shit, basically ever since. And it's like they can't compete with Clemson anymore, and they're not even in the same conference. But it's not really. It's pretty lopsided. So there isn't that rivalry, so to speak, and I don't know if it'll ever come back because I saw South Carolina. Speaking of, did you see South Carolina, their starting quarterback this year?
No, I haven't.
Okay, so I just read this. Actually, I read it on Miami website. They were talking about South Carolina, their graduate assistant, who has been their graduate assistant they just decided to make him like, I don't even know if he played I don't think he was practicing with the team or anything like that. I think he's going to be their starter for their first game.
Yeah, that's what I just pulled that up.
Yeah.
Weird.
I don't know all the details to the story, but I just saw that. Yeah, he's their graduate assistant.
Shane Beamer and South Carolina Gamecocks have named starting quarterback.
Zeb Noland is the kid.
Zeb Noland will get the nod. Yeah. I guess that's legal. I guess that's within the rules. He's a grad assistant on Beamer's coaching staff.
Well, because
Shane Beamer, is that Frank Beamer's son, the guy from Virginia Tech?
I have no idea.
I wonder if that's. I mean,
Will Muschamp was their coach, was South Carolina's coach for a little bit.
Right. Yeah, he was there for several years.
What a disaster that guy is.
But he's one of those people that was really good as a coordinator and just does not shine as a head coach.
Yep. Yeah. So anyway, I thought that was an interesting story. Speaking of South Carolina, but I think it's kind of one of those things where when the team sucks, you don't really like feel the vibe that it's like a college football like town. But if all of a sudden South Carolina was doing well, you would notice all the fans kind of coming out of the woodwork. So I don't know if he's like,
yeah. Good old Vandy holding down the bottom of the power rankings.
And look at South Carolina.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Rebuilding. Mississippi State, Tennessee.
Auburn. Jeez. I haven't paid much attention to SEC stuff.
No. I've tuned into a little bit of like LSU chatter, but not even just like on the whole. I don't really know what's going on. Hey, we're in the top 4. That's good.
Isn't that's interesting about
this? That's not happening. No. They don't deserve to be number 3. They haven't earned that yet.
Right.
Okay. Anyway, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say it's surprising to see Auburn that low too. Maybe another example. Gus Malzahn, he's right here with some big moments, kind of here and there, and then you get these universities that are like, oh, we're just maybe one good hire of a coach away from being dominant, and then they fire the coach, and then next thing you know, they're gone for a while.
Yeah, they just drop off. Very interesting. Very interesting.
Well, that's the cool thing about college football is you just talk about never knowing. Like, college football is pretty wild. So that's one reason why I do. And I will say too, like, back in the day when you're working Monday through Friday, I think a lot of people would spend their weekends watching football, Saturday and then Sunday for the pros. I think that was one thing that sort of I started to gravitate more towards college anyway, was when you stopped having weekends, right?
Yeah.
And you kind of give yourself maybe one day where you can just kind of sit on the couch and kind of hang out. And I picked Saturday college football instead of pros on Sunday because I'm like, man, you can't do that anymore. You can't sit around watch football all day Saturday and all day Sunday like when you have the schedule we do. But I'm ready, man. I think I'm not sure what I'm gonna do because she works 7 p.m. 7 a.m. Like I said, she's a cop, so she works this weekend. So I'm definitely gonna have some bourbon. It's a 3:30. It's a 3:30 game. I'll definitely have. I don't know because man, college football is fucking crazy, and I think Alabama's like a 20-point favorite, and at the same time, anytime you have a quarterback like Miami does, the one thing Alabama has always struggled with is like a mobile quarterback that can run, make things happen.
Yeah.
Alabama's defense should be pretty phenomenal, but anytime you have like a wild card like that, like Miami's quarterback, you can create some tough things. I don't expect to beat them, but it might be.
That's a good showing you want. Yeah.
It might be good. It might get a little wild. You never know. Like I like to think that you have a realistic view, but all that changes once the game starts. Next thing you're a fucking lunatic.
Good stuff, man.
What about LSU? What does LSU do?
We play UCLA 7:00 in the Rose Bowl Stadium.
Oh, that's a cool matchup. I mean, I think maybe probably when they scheduled it, they probably anticipated maybe a more cool matchup, with Chip Kelly and stuff like that being there. And so they probably scheduled it, I don't know, probably 5-6 years ago, it seems like.
Yeah, and now the repeat game with them, like them coming to Tiger Stadium, or I guess the Superdome, wherever they do it, that's not going to happen until 2025 now. But we just booked a game with USC for the first game of 2024 for the Vegas Kickoff Classic. So they'll do it in the new Raiders Stadium in Vegas in 2024. But who knows? I mean, like these things.
Yeah, I did read about that.
Yeah, but it's going to be I mean, you know how fluid college football schedules are and all of that stuff.
Right.
I mean, like a couple of years ago, we were supposed to have a home and home with Oklahoma. That never happened. Although now with conference realignment going on, we'll probably start having that a lot more frequently now too.
Well, yeah, because so that's one other thing. Like Miami's schedule this year is pretty weak. Well, they scheduled a home and home with Michigan State like years ago, right? Michigan State's they're pretty bad now, but they were when they scheduled the game years ago. Michigan State Miami was like kind of a cool matchup, you know, territorial kind of thing. Like now it's like, oh man, like it kind of lost a lot of its luster, you know, years later when you actually play the game. That's kind of the weird thing about college football, because I know Miami scheduled, they have a series with Florida and Notre Dame coming up also. So it's kind of cool to see some of these scheduling decisions sort of come to fruition. You know, the Alabama game, I could have done with the Alabama game getting canceled or something like that, but
oh, I mean, it's good that they're reuniting the Catholics and convicts rivalry, so that's good with y'all and Notre Dame. So that'll be good to see again.
Well, and especially I was surprised noted because the last time they played, Miami beat the ever-loving shit out of them, and that was probably it was definitely the highlight of the last 15 years as a Miami fan. Was they beat the fuck out of Notre Dame.
Well, awesome. I don't like Notre Dame as a university. I think Rudy's one of the most overrated movies of all time and all of that stuff. So it's just anytime Notre Dame goes down, like we kicked the shit out of them when we had Jamarcus Russell as quarterback and played him in the Sugar Bowl, and I think that's when Brady Quinn was their quarterback too. It's just one of those pretty boys that you're glad when you just drive their faces into the dirt. Just arrogant people there, man.
Yeah, that's what you'll always see, like Miami fans. There'll always be like signs, even when they don't play Notre Dame. Miami fans hate Notre Dame that bad, but you'll always see like on game day or whatever, someone will have a sign that says like Rudy was offsides.
Yeah, I've seen that one a bunch of times.
I just hate them so bad. So yeah, man. So wait, when did you say that they play UCLA? Not Saturday?
This weekend, 7:00. So it'll be right after your game. So we're going to one of the teachers at Sandy's work. We're going to go over to their house. They're going to be doing he's got one of those big green egg like smokers and stuff. So he's going to be doing pulled pork, mac and cheese. So we're going to get over there after the halflings nap at 4. We're going to watch the Clemson game first because he is a Clemson grad. His wife's an Auburn grad. So he's a huge Clemson fan, but he's also gone back to get his doctorate right now from Mississippi State. So now he's starting to gravitate more in towards the SEC side of things as well. But we'll be there. We'll watch that game, and then we'll watch the LSU game after that and have lots of I've been tapped to be the bartender for the night. So he's got 4 or 5 different bourbons already at his place. A couple of them from Michigan. They're like local Michigan bourbons, which I'm curious to try that out. And I'm going to bring over a few of my stash here, and then we'll mix up some old fashions and Kentucky mules and whatever else is going on. So it'll be a good weekend of bourbon and college football and barbecue.
Yeah, because I'm like, all right, like I know for sure I'll start drinking in the afternoon. So try not to schedule any meetings for Saturday.
Good idea.
Cream on that's a good YouTube name right there.
Creamy, yeah.
Yeah, man. So thanks for switching up the schedule a little bit today.
Yeah, of course. Stocked up on cigars. I'm not a cigar guy. I've never done a cigar. I've never smoked a cigarette or a cigar or a joint or anything like that. My only substance of abuse is caffeine and bourbon. So
same here. I'm not a cigar guy. Not.
Yeah. I haven't. Maybe when I turn 60, I might be into cigars or something like that. I think it's like an old man thing. You gravitate towards that, and then I might actually start enjoying scotch at that point too.
Yeah, that's a good point. You never know. Yeah. Never know.
Yep.
All right, man.
Cool. All right, buddy. Thank you all to the people that tuned in. If you're catching us on the replay, make sure to like, comment, subscribe to the video. Shoot me an email to supplementengineer@gmail.com if you have any other questions or topics for a future podcast. Slide into Justin's DMs at Supplement Snoop on Instagram.
Yeah.
And we'll catch you all next time on Bourbon Brothers.